Hey, how's it going, guys? And welcome back to the Monster Taming and Chill podcast, where we interview various game developers to gain a greater insight to their works. Today, I'm happy to have with me Reece, the developer of Monster Tribe, an upcoming monster taming game that, as of the time you're watching this video, is live on Kickstarter. How's it going, man?
Going pretty good, man. How are you, Ed?
I can't complain. So, as usual, we'll do a rundown of various aspects of the game, and we'll also be asking questions from you, the community, towards the end. So, definitely, if you want to be more involved in these podcasts, check out our Monster Taming Discord that's linked in the description. Now, other than that, all the social media links for Monster Tribe, including the Steam page, the Kickstarter page, Reese's YouTube and Twitter, will all be linked in the description, so you can check that out for your convenience. But anyways, let's get started. Why don't you tell us about yourself, man?
So my name is Reece Geoffroy, and I'm 20 years old. I've been developing video games for about 4 years, I think, at this point. I'm from Canada as well. I
Hey,
know, Ed, you're from Canada, so
represent.
Canada gang. And yeah, right now I'm developing Monster Tribe, which is kind of like my main thing. But I do, freelance work on the side in art, and I also run the YouTube channel. Where I do like game development related content.
Awesome. Yeah, I've checked out your YouTube channel. It's very entertaining. I highly recommend it. Um, so
Thanks, man.
no problem. So what for anybody that maybe is watching this video and has never heard of Monster Tribe, can you explain sort of what the game is, what its core features are, the sort of gameplay loop behind it, and how it stands apart from other games in the genre?
For sure. So Monster Tribe, at its core, is an open world turn-based RPG. It's a monster catcher. So obviously you have all the normal RPG elements, but throwing into the mix, we have things like resource collection.
Hmm.
It was something that I felt was very, yes, a little bit different from most other monster catchers that I see.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of specifics, but I think the biggest thing is just like the open world aspect, the resource collection, and the team-based battling. So all your monsters fight at one time, and it's a little bit more of a strategy-based combat system.
Awesome. So with regards to the Kickstarter, can you sort of break down what your goal is and sort of where funding will be going towards?
Right. Yeah, I'm actually going to pull the Kickstarter up right now. But the Kickstarter, our goal is 15,000 Canadian. So I think US, that's about
Yeah,
$12,000.
yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so our goal is, I mean, that might seem like a lot or not a lot, depending on, I guess, people's situations.
Yeah.
But for us, this is just the base amount of money for us to, fully develop the game and finish the game.
Mm.
I went full time into doing game dev full time this year and I guess last year. So this is kind of to, get in the rest of the funding for, things like getting in the extra art that we
Yeah.
want in the game, and paying ourselves to be able to finish this game, um, throughout the year and stuff like that, and really just to get it started. Like get some initial funding, get some people excited about the game,
For sure.
and then see how far we can really take it with all of our stretch goals and things like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Speaking of stretch goals, that leads into my next question. You do have the question was, do you currently have stretch goals, which you do, and if so, can you name some?
Yeah, so we do have stretch goals. Probably about every 5,000, just to some smaller rewards in there for getting people excited.
Hmm.
And then we have some bigger things like we would love to get in hand-drawn cutscenes. I had a friend of mine draw up the concept art, which is now like the cover art for the game.
Yeah.
Which I basically throw everywhere. And so I would love to get him onto the project to do all of the cutscenes in the game, for any kind of like story element.
Yeah.
I really like when games have kind of like a comic book like art
Yeah.
mixed with text. So something like that would be really cool. I love to port to Nintendo Switch, so that's something we're trying to work at. But there are some additional finances for that.
Yeah.
A larger world map, a
Yeah, no, for sure.
lot of small sprinkles.
I think the biggest thing for a lot of people is going to be that switch. Every time,
Yeah, for
every
sure.
time I make a video about anything, is this available on the Switch? Is this available on the Switch? So it's definitely
Yeah,
a big
that's
one.
for sure. That's definitely the main stretch goal we like to see actually happen, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. So,
fingers crossed.
yeah, exactly. So, can you talk about some of the backer tiers, which I believe are a lot of like really important to a lot of people? Which ones sort of obviously I don't expect you to go through all of them, but which ones stand out to you the most, and why were they chosen specifically?
So I guess kind of like the base reward would be about 15 Canadian. So again, maybe something like 12 US dollars.
Yeah.
And that's to get the game. You get access to the game when it comes out. You get your name in the credits. Everybody that backs the campaign will, get some form of credibility. And so some extra rewards that I think are really cool is, the smaller ones, like, again, getting the game. And then you have some other ones like getting the wallpapers and the OST.
Yeah.
I have a composer on the project that is absolutely killing it. I am in love with every track that he puts out. So I think the OST is really going to be something special when it's all done. You will also be able to get beta access to the game if you back over a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
And so some of the bigger ones would be something like the art book. We're creating an art book for the game.
Okay.
And we want to get it physically done. So my brother's actually published a book before. He's working on the game as well. So getting a physical hardcover of this art/lore book would be absolutely amazing. So really excited about that.
That's cool.
And then I guess just like, potential opportunities for people to make new monsters, create NPCs and things like that. But those are for more of the higher investors for sure.
Yeah, definitely stuff that people enjoy. Like I always see those really high. Like I'm always kind of surprised by how many people like back some of those higher tiers with even Kickstarters like Kindred Fates, where you have like I can't remember how much it was, but I'm pretty sure they filled out on like the Create a Kinfolk tier, and it's like wow, like people really want their stuff in the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's a cool thing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like you get a piece of developing something. So yeah, it's like that's awesome. I love those. I had to do that for mine.
Yeah, I know for sure. Like I remember Cerealum Ultimate had a tier where you can create a costume. So of course I had to do that because I wanted to be in the game. So it's pretty cool stuff. It definitely fangirled a little bit over it when I saw myself. So can you describe the plot of Monster Tribe, including sort of the backstory, like behind the game, and then what you'll be sort of doing in terms of story while you're actually playing? Obviously, as much as you can without spoiling too much.
So, yeah. So as you said, try not to spoil the entire game.
Yeah.
I'll give people a brief overview. So the game takes place in over an island, and this island's basically been corrupted. A lot of the finer details I'll probably be leaving out, but for the most part, basically there's this major theme of kind of like a technology versus nature, or kind of like a corruption versus natural. And so kind of the idea is about, yes, humans being a little bit more greedy than maybe they should be. And so over time, like in ancient past, in the lore of the game, the island has been kind of like creatures were used as like a technology, like a source of energy. So now it's at the point where the island's corrupt, and there's only a few people left that can actually access these creatures, because technically in like an alternate dimension, it's a little hard to explain in a small wrapped up thing, but in the actual game, your mission is basically to find these towers throughout the island that were created by your ancestors, and to free the legendary creatures that are inside, that they used to use for, as I said before, like power. To advance their tribe. So yeah, it's kind of like this battle between nature, again, like nature versus technology. So that's, I guess, the objective is to free these creatures and restore the lands at least somewhat back to a state that is be functional.
Yeah, yeah. No, that actually sounds pretty interesting. Is there going to be a lot of like story in the game? Like, would you consider it story driven or?
I would say it's pretty. I've always been a huge fan of story games. I know a lot of indie games that don't focus at all on story,
Yeah.
and they just kind of have like, here's a little bit as to, like, what is going on, and then here's gameplay.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not going to be like that. We're going to have a lot of dialogue. Everything in the game. If you think of something like Dark Souls, I feel like that's kind of an extreme, but they have, you know, a lot of story, but it's all through lore, descriptions, and like really digging in deep. So we want to go for a solid midpoint where, you know, there's a lot of dialogue, there's cutscenes, so you're understanding a brief understanding of what the story is, but there's more to uncover through relics that'll basically give you like mysterious information, lore descriptions through items and resources and monsters and all that stuff. So there's a lot to learn about the world if you really dig deep.
We'll have to get that Vati Vidya guy to make videos about the game's item descriptions. I don't know if you've heard of that guy. He's like a Dark Souls YouTuber. How important is it to you that you keep the community updated on your various social media platforms, specifically your YouTube channel?
I think it's really important. For me, I feel like I'm a very open person. So just when I get progress done on the game, it's like it's like my child, and I feel like I want to share that with the people that care. So for me, it's really important. I spend, you know, hours and hours a day catching up with people, messaging back in the comment section, creating the devlogs, obviously, and then, you know, sending people extra stuff on Twitter. YouTube's kind of like, I guess, my main like public. That's like, for me, like that's the public. Twitter is something that's a little bit more private, a little bit more reserved, so I can share a little bit more and not give everything away to everybody. So yeah, I try to do it in the best way that I can, because, you know, I've always been somebody that doesn't like spoilers and stuff. So I try to give it in a way that it's not giving everything away, but people can be excited and see that the game is actually coming to life and progressing in some kind of way.
Yeah, makes sense. So in terms of development, can you give us sort of a rundown of how long the game's been in development and sort of what the timeline is from, you know, now to potential alpha, beta, etc.?
For sure. So the game's been in development for about 9 months.
Okay.
And I would say we're aiming for Q4 2021 to Q1 2022. That's kind of like our release schedule. So we're aiming for the end of the year. But, you know, if the Kickstarter ends up doing really well and we want to expand the game a little bit more, then we might be able to, you know, kind of extend that a little bit into the beginning of 2022. But we just want to get this game out, and a lot of times people with like devlogs and stuff, a lot of those projects fall through. So a lot of the fans actually are very skeptical. And so I just want to prove people wrong and tell them, you know, like, this is a game and this is something I'm making because I'm passionate about it. So I'm going to see it through to the end, no matter what. So.
Oh, for sure. And is the Q4/Q1 2021 2022, is that for the early access or the full launch?
That's full launch. So we won't be doing any kind of early access. That'll be full launch, game's done and ready to go. Just because, since it is a little bit more of like a story game, we don't really want to give people like half the game. We just want to have it, here it is. But as I said before, we are going to have some kind of like demo. So for the people that back, I think it's 30 Canadian. I think it's $30 Canadian. You get access to the beta. You get like a specific role on the Discord channel, if you're a part of it, where you can basically give back, like be in a private chat room to discuss things like feedback and any bugs or things that you find. So and that will also be updated. I want to update it at least like once every month or 2 months with a little bit of extra content just to keep people satisfied and
Yeah.
and excited about the game, even though they played it,
Yeah.
a little bit in advance. So
So will the beta be like NDA, or will it be something that people can like sort of stream and play through like in public, or is it something you want to sort of keep behind closed doors?
no, I think it'll be a little bit more public. It
Okay,
won't
okay,
be
cool.
something that I go out of my way necessarily to like start marketing it in
Yeah.
a way, but no, it wouldn't be like a private thing for
Okay,
sure.
I just want to know because basically when it comes out, I want to play it on my channel. So,
Then yeah, for sure, man.
so tell me about the exploration aspects on the game because on the Kickstarter, it's sort of specifically mentioned. And you know what do you be spending most of your time doing while playing?
So yeah, I want to focus a huge amount on the open worldness and the actual exploration portion of that. So basically, in this game, think if people can think of something like kind of like Breath of the Wild,
Yeah,
but obviously not that expansive. But you can tackle the game in any order. So you can go to any tower you want in any order, and that's something that we've had planned for a while. So the story's a little bit more adaptive,
hmm.
which is a little bit harder, but it's something that is manageable.
Yeah,
So everybody's playthrough is going to be a little bit different, and the exploration aspect, um, I want people to feel very like almost like lost at points where
yeah,
the game's fair, and so you don't feel necessarily like you don't know where you're going, but you feel lost in the world
yeah,
and explore because you want to find secrets and things like that. So I've been a huge Nintendo fan all my life, and
yeah,
I think that they could do a really good job of sprinkling in secrets here and there and giving people kind of like an open-ended map from time to time
yeah.
in certain games. So it's definitely a huge inspiration for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think one type of game that's underrated are like these sort of 2D pixel art open world games. Like I've
Yeah.
noticed that pixel art open world games, like even you want to go way back, you can even talk about like Zelda 1, but games
Mm.
like that, I always find have more stuff going on in their worlds because I don't know if it's because the worlds are technically smaller than the 3D games, but like they have way more
Right.
secrets and way more fun stuff to explore. Like there's a few that are coming out that I'm really excited for.
Sure. Yeah.
So the next question I have here is the combat system. You mentioned it's strategic. Can you explain, like, give us a basic rundown of how combat system goes?
Yeah. So it's a little hard because we keep tweaking it. So sometimes
It
I
happens.
honestly forget. But it's basically like it's like a grid based combat. So all of your monsters will be placed on a grid.
Hmm.
It's a like 6 square grid, so 2 by 3.
Okay.
And you have your monsters versus the enemy monsters, and basically all of your attacks, instead of picking specific squares, all of your attacks would technically have like spots that they would target on the grid.
Okay.
So it's hard to explain, and a lot of people still don't really understand it, and it might be just something that people have to play with to really understand it. But if you've ever seen the attack descriptions or whatever, a lot of the moves have based on a 9 by 9 or like a 3 by 3 grid.
Okay. Okay.
And so basically it's like your 3 by 3 grid is like your center tile is your selection tile.
Okay.
And so everything happens around that center tile. um and then yeah, it's just a turn based, so you go, enemy goes, and
Okay.
then yeah, you can move your monsters, you can rest them to restore stamina, and then obviously you can use your attacks to deal damage. We have status conditions and stuff like that as well. So we want to play into the more strategic type of play styles, I guess.
Okay.
Um, not to like shade something like Pokemon, because I think a lot of people think that when I compare something, it's in a shade way, but
Yeah, I know.
it's just comparison for comparison's
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah.
But if you were to look at something like Pokemon, it's like a lot of the same aspects are there, but maybe just a little bit more amplified. Like
Yeah.
weather is really important in our combat. So
Okay.
weather would give you a lot of added bonuses. So taking control of the weather is very important.
Okay.
Same with status conditions, all very balanced to be, you know, enough of a hindrance that it's like it's worth using. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's just a combat based system. So
Okay.
hopefully that gives something.
So basically, this is just sort of my curiosity. Since it's on a grid, you said it's like 6 tiles. So would you have attacks that, like, let's say I'm just using random attack names. Let's say I use, like, I don't know, water spit. Like, is that an attack that always goes hits a grid space in front of you, and then you might have an attack that always hits the one like adjacent to you, and then one that always hits like the one diagonal?
So
Or is that kind of how it works?
right. Not technically. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So for us, it's more like you have like a team. You have a team grid and an enemy grid. So
Okay.
you can't move onto an opposing side.
Okay.
But all of your attacks would focus around. So like, let's say for example, it's your selection square. So wherever you selected, plus the square above it and the square below it could be an
Oh,
attack.
okay.
And so it would hit the 3 game
Oh,
squares
I
or
got you. I
something.
got you. So you have
Yeah.
6, your enemy has 6. And then
Yeah.
their attacks like you might have an attack that can color one, can hit 1 square, or can hit 2 squares, or can hit 3 squares, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's definitely unique.
So you have a
from
front
other
line and a
monster
back
taming
line.
games.
Yep.
Yeah, I
For
haven't heard of
sure.
any
We tried our
more.
best.
Yeah, I haven't heard of I mean, I've heard of a couple that were supposed to be strategic, but some of them went kind of quiet. But yeah, this is the
Right.
first sort of more tactical combat system. So interesting. I'm pretty interested in that. So how integral are these? You were talking about resources. So how integral are the resources to the game?
I'd say they're pretty important. Like resources are used for not only doing things like, quests around the town, like maybe you have to give an elderly, some wood to make
Hmm.
a fire and
Yeah.
whatever. So there are definitely things like quest objectives that resources are useful for, but there's also the main mechanic, which I don't know if this is a question for future, but I guess we can dabble in it now. But our game doesn't have a traditional evolution system,
Okay.
which a lot of people might freak out about. But instead of doing evolution, we're doing something called fusions.
Okay.
And so what fusing is basically you're fusing a monster with other like items and like other energy sources, basically.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, resources and items are used for, those kind of things like fusing monsters, reviving creature DNA,
Okay.
and things like that. But yeah, they definitely have a lot of uses in different ways. So resource collection will be an important part to the game, but also something that you can kind of like haggle your way through. Like if you just like buy things and stuff like that. So it's different play styles are definitely, it's a flexible game for sure.
Okay, and
for people that maybe don't want to experience aspect or two.
Okay. Will the resources like obviously I'm assuming I mean actually, I'll ask this next question and then I'll go back to this because I think it's more relevant. The next question is, how will the resource management / collection side of things work? Will you have certain levels and restrictions for mining and wood cutting, sort of like RuneScape, or will you just, like, if you get an axe you'll be able to cut down any tree, or like how's that going to work?
Yeah. So first of all, I love the RuneScape analogy.
So do I.
This
I love
game
Sorry,
of my childhood.
I meant I love RuneScape, but
But yeah, so that's a good question. So in the game, there's different shops that have different purposes.
Yeah.
And one of those shops is the blacksmith. Blacksmith
Yeah.
is pretty important. He can craft items from resources, but one of the main things is he can upgrade your tools and basically create new tools. So in total, there's 12 tools. There's 3 different types. There's the fishing rod, the axe for cutting down trees, and there's a pickaxe for mining rocks. And so there's 4 tools per tool. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
But
I know what you mean.
yeah, so you'll be able to get different resources from different whatever you call them, like different things in the environment will give you different resources, but also using different tools will get you maybe sometimes different tools.
Okay.
So yeah, like not everything will be accessible right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Tools will definitely have to be something that you get unlocked throughout the game, and will kind of unlock like a semi like progression system, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's what I was
Resources.
kind of wondering. Yeah, like for example, I'm
Yeah.
just using this as an analogy, but in RuneScape, okay, in RuneScape there's an actual physical level, but so I'm guessing in this it's like if you have a tier 1 axe or something, or a pickaxe or whatever, you can only mine like certain materials. You got to upgrade that so you can mine like gold and stuff, and then you maybe got to upgrade it again to mine platinum, like kind of like that.
I think it's kind of the opposite. So with RuneScape, it's more about your level.
Yeah,
It's like I'm level 30 mining, so I can only do said ore.
yeah,
Whereas for this game, it's like as long as you have the tool, you can mine whatever you want to mine, or whatever is capable of getting with that with that tool.
okay, yeah,
But yeah, so it's kind of like the opposite, where the tool matters and there's no leveling.
yeah,
Leveling is just like upgrading the tool would just basically make it more like efficient,
yeah.
but it wouldn't actually give you extra bonuses.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Okay, okay. So we actually just touched on the blacksmith, but can you talk about some of the other items within the game? We know there's like I said in the question here, we know there's going to be a blacksmith, but what types of weapons and equipment can we expect to see, and how will we utilize them?
So our game actually doesn't have item like usable items in terms of like in Pokemon how you would have something like potions and elixirs and stuff.
Yeah,
We actually don't have that stuff because we took it out because it was too complex. The combat system as it is already kind of like it's easy to get into, but it's incredibly hard to find perfect strategies
yeah,
and really test the limits of that. So with the complexity on how the battle system already is, we just decided that adding items into there is just going to add extra chaos and potentially take away from the gameplay.
yeah.
So our items function in, as I was saying earlier, kind of like using new monsters to get different like evolutionary forms.
Hmm.
And things like that. So really you just have like your tools, which you use to gather resources. You have your resources, which you use to get items and talking about before. And then items are kind of like, it's like extra resources. They don't have like a specific like extra purpose necessarily. It's just like using them in different ways, I guess.
Okay.
Is the
So,
best way to describe it.
so
They're like resources that are rare enough that you can't like collect them out in the wild, I
okay.
guess.
So with regards to the capturing system, I remember you mentioned, and I had read. I mean, I read the Kickstarter, but for those who don't know, can you explain how obtaining new monsters will work?
Yeah, so it's actually something that honestly is still not 100% solved. This is the main thing that I think is like something I still have to continue to bounce around with.
Hmm.
But what we've kind of decided on, at least for now, maybe we can get feedback from the community after the demo comes out and stuff like that. But what we have right now is that collect DNA. So I don't know if people have ever played the game Fossil Fighters, but I really liked Fossil Fighters growing up. And how that game works is you basically like find these fossils, and then you can take the fossils to a lab and like recreate dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of doing something similar where in the wilds, when you fight monsters, instead of actually like having the opportunity to capture said monster,
Yeah.
because it's like there's always groups of monsters. It would be kind of hard to like always limit it to like the last possible catch or whatever, like last
Yeah.
possible monster. So instead, we're just doing it where it's kind of just like item drops. After you finish a battle, you'll
Yeah.
get item drops, and sometimes DNA will appear.
Okay.
And so you can use that DNA with items and resources to like bring the creature back to revive it in this like laboratory type, like
Yeah.
sciencey system. So
Would there be like a
so
certain
far.
amount of DNA you would need to like let's say I'm just using this as an example, but let's say you knock out a Rattata. Would you get like
Hmm.
2 DNA, but you need like 10 to create one, or is it just
Yeah.
like if you? Oh,
Yeah.
it is like that. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it would
so
be like a
for
quantity system.
okay, so for legendaries, like if there's legendaries in the game, I'm assuming knocking it out once would just
Yeah,
give
it'd
you the
be
full amount.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already told us about your guys' take on the fusion system. Can you tell us a little bit about the monsters themselves? What sort of designs can we expect to see?
Okay. So our monsters are definitely more monsters rather than these.
Yeah.
A lot of people tell me that, hey, like you should make your monsters a little bit more friendly and like cute. But for this game specifically, we're going for a different approach.
Yeah.
So with something like Pokemon, I feel like
They're
a
animals,
huge like
most of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
like they want to appeal to, having like partners.
Yeah.
Which I think makes total sense for their game and their audience that they're approaching and
Oh yeah.
everything. But for our game, we're going for something a little bit more serious. So, expect monsters to look a little bit more scary side. They're
Yeah.
still a little bit more personal and like, and you can feel that same attachment because they have different personalities and those come through in the designs. But it's definitely a little bit more reserved, I guess. So as far as like specific monster designs go, I would just say like a lot of it was really liked like with Pokemon, I always really liked like those like pseudo legendary
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
or like those Tyranitar and Salamence and stuff like that. So yeah, more along those lines rather than something like Pikachu.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. A lot of games will go the sort of Pokemon route. And one thing
Right.
I have noticed in the genre a little bit is some games have a little bit of trouble when like with their monsters having a unique like okay, for example, when you look at a Pokemon, you know it's a Pokemon, right?
Yep.
If
Yep.
I look at a Monster Crown monster, like I know it's a Monster Crown monster. Or a Cerulean monster, like I know it's a Cerulean monster, but some games you can't really like some of them you wouldn't be able to tell, like they're missing that sort of
Right.
sense of identity because maybe they try too much to be like Pokemon. So I definitely think
Sure. Yeah.
having like more monstrous creatures is good for that too.
For sure.
And I mean I
Yeah.
prefer them, so that's good. So do you have any plans for any sort of multiplayer, whether it be PvP or co-op?
Yes, we do. So can't remember if we decided for or against, but we're supposed to be doing a co-op story mode. So it would be in terms of more of like the new Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. It's like you're fully a person there and alive, and you can run around and do stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to like talking to NPCs and stuff like that, the main protagonist would be the one to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Also, it kind of works with how our story's built. There's some elements that basically not necessarily that it's like you're the only one that can do this, but some elements that are kind of like that, just in terms of like there's kind of like a religion in the game, and so there's like certain rituals that take place, and so you're like the main protagonist has basically gone further than allies would have.
Okay.
So he's more spiritually connected to these creatures, and so there's certain limitations for the like co-op companions that it makes sense as like a part of the game.
Yeah.
But also just gameplay wise, I think it was the right call because you want to make sure that the main control is with the main protagonist. So
yeah. So would it be
and then we also have versus mode, so you'll be able to play against your friends. That was something that we needed because I'm developing this game primarily with my brother, and we grew up, making game ideas and stuff, and so we'd always wanted to make some kind of monster catcher game.
Yeah.
And we knew like if we make that, I got to be able to beat you at my own game, So that was a huge thing for us to include for sure.
Yeah, PvP I think is important for a lot of people. I mean, because like it is fun to catch and battle like in game, but there's always that like inherent like I want to be able to use these to like if I'm gonna grind these guys up to whatever level, like I want to be, or I'm gonna
Mhm.
breed them or do whatever, like depending on the game. Like I want to be able to, use them to beat up little kids. Like that's kind of what I'm just kidding, but
Sure, for sure.
yeah, you want to use them to battle people. With regards to the co-op mode, so would the co-op mode function? You mentioned the Let's Go games. Would it function like so? If I have you in my party, you can control some of my monsters, or do you bring your own monsters with you?
That part is also kind of something that's up in the air.
Okay.
We can go either way, and so again, that's probably something that's like more of like a community vote thing, which is why we're really excited about the Kickstarter, because it allows, those backers that are really excited about the game and
Yeah.
invested in the game to help us out in a meaningful way, right? And so yeah, we'll have to see, but that could definitely go either way, where you have kind of like two monsters is the main person and two
Yeah.
monsters is the secondary, or it's just kind of like a collective shared pool. So
Okay.
we'll have to see
Yeah,
how that works.
not to bring up Dark Souls again, and I think my audience is eventually just gonna leave me because I always talk about Dark Souls. But Dark Souls kind of have you played the Dark Souls games?
I've played them. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So when you join someone's world, like you still get the benefit of like gaining like souls and whatever while helping someone in their co-op world, but it doesn't actually affect your world. I've seen that type of. So is that kind of what you guys are going for?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or like helpers rather than completely separate
Yeah, because that could be kind of
characters.
like I always thought that was kind of good because like you can like in that game specifically, if you want to grind up your souls and you don't want to progress the story because I don't know, you're near a PvP area or something, that's one way to do it. So like I could see people doing that if it like gives them gold or something or some sort of items or something. Or boss drops, I think was one that people do in the third game or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so dungeons. Tell us about dungeons.
Yeah, so dungeons are kind of like, for us, like the towers. That's like the most secretive thing, I think. It's like I've only teased it a very little bit. And that's because that's like the main part that we are kind of like keeping to the end. We want to figure out all the main stuff first. But the towers, I would say, like, again, I've been very heavily influenced by Nintendo. So like Zelda is a good place to kind of look at for that, because we have always loved kind of like the mix between like adventuring into a dungeon and exploring that dungeon, but also having like puzzles and like combat type of situations. Our game would be, it's turn-based, so it's not specifically like mastery of combat, but it's more like, movement puzzles, running away from orbs that are chasing you, and things like that. And then also like puzzles to figure out and things to interact with inside like of the towers. So they're the most secretive part of our game, though, for sure.
That was kind of one thing I was a little bit miffed about with Breath of the Wild. I was like, where's the dungeons? I remember like some of my favorite dungeons were like in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, where like I mean nobody really likes a water temple, but like dungeons like in Twilight Princess you have the oh my god, the Death Mountain one was pretty cool. And even like like in Wind Waker, one of the dungeons that I really enjoyed were actually the mini dungeons. There was like the ice one and the little volcano. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Zelda's a great franchise to take inspiration from with dungeon design. Like some of their dungeons are just really well designed. Dragon
so ours will definitely operate. Yeah, ours will definitely operate like on a much smaller scale. But
for sure.
I think the main thing is like having themes. Like, each tower is set in a different piece of the island with a separate like environmental zone. So with that, we're kind of like, theming the dungeons around those things. So there will be certain like effects and things that happen within that dungeon that is specific to that dungeon because of that element, for
Okay.
example. So yeah, we want to make sure that every dungeon feels different without like with even having a very simple gameplay, I guess, like gameplay loop,
Yeah.
or like control scheme. We want to kind of like test the boundaries with that and see what we can really bring out with all of these different like, typings and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we did talk about the Nintendo Switch. Do you guys have any plans for any other platforms if the game's successful?
Yeah, so PC for sure, Steam. It's going to be on Steam.
Yeah.
And Nintendo Switch is something that we're trying our absolute best at.
Yeah.
But again, it's not confirmed.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to kind of like leave it up in the air.
So we got to get that stretch
So
goal,
Nintendo
guys.
Switch is for sure like something that we want to see. And then, you know, depending on how well the Kickstarter does and how well, you know, how excited people are for the game, I'm definitely going to try my best, you know, reach out to the other consoles and stuff like that. But I think that securing a high funded like Kickstarter campaign would definitely help with that.
Oh
So
yeah.
because Switch is like the main one, I wanted to do it like right away. So
Yeah.
I'm in talks with Nintendo, but nothing's confirmed yet.
Yeah.
And then the other systems are kind of up in the air. We'll see what happens, um, depending on how well this game does. So we'll see.
Awesome. So that sort of concludes the main questions that I had for Reece. The second part of this podcast, and obviously it's not going to be the same length, but we have some community questions to go through. And you guys asked a few spicy questions. So we're going to start with Mr. Cirque. What are your main inspirations for making the game? And are there any lessons you've learned during game development? And then he notes at the end, the game is looking great, by the way.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So the main inspirations for me, as I said, you know, growing up on Nintendo, have a lot of I've been inspired a lot by their games, specifically like Zelda.
Yeah.
And then also I know Pokemon's not actually a Nintendo title, but the Pokemon games have been a very big influence, and I'm sure a lot of other monster catcher devs feel the same way. But I think more of like the weird ones would be things like Hyper Light Drifter. I played that game a couple years ago, and honestly, I don't even think I beat that game. But I was so obsessed with the game because of just like the soundtrack.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I pulled a lot of those elements with my composer, um, to kind of like influence a lot of the same kind of like sounds and musical like instruments and things like that, uh, they kind of use.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, that was just something for me that was like very important because I absolutely love that game and the soundtrack. So that was a cool kind of like inspired thing. And then honestly, just like life. I think that a lot of people pull only from video games, but
Yeah.
I think that, you know, inspiration comes in all kinds of forms. And so like I think that the world that it is right now is a huge inspiration for this project because of the fact that with these themes of kind of like nature versus technology, kind of like advancement,
Yeah.
and things like that. Where I want to, with all of my projects going forward, including Monster Tribe,
Yeah.
I want people to kind of come away with experience,
Yeah.
you know, gameplay wise, but also with a message.
Yeah.
And so this game, I think, fits really well just with, you know, I'm not saying that I'm like some kind of like complete like environmentalist like I don't know, like guru or anything,
Yeah.
but I do think that it's a very important time to be focusing on something like that, you
Yeah.
know, taking care of our planet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like those kind of elements. So I think just being inspired by just like the world around you is also really important. So
Okay, cool. So Ghost.
the Breath of the Wild.
Ghost asks, what part of during the development of Monster Tribe gave you the biggest wow moment? And it could be like a favorite concept or perhaps a challenge you've overcome.
Okay, so I guess I'll give two. I'll give my biggest wow moment and I'll give my favorite like concept idea, I guess. So my biggest wow moment was definitely like in that first devlog 0, having like basically no following on YouTube. I was doing YouTube for I think like 6 to 8 months or something
Okay.
before that. And so I released that. And I think the highest amount of views I'd ever gotten was maybe like 1,000 views.
Yeah.
And that was like, that was huge for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for
so
sure.
that video came out in the first like week. I think it got like 18 or 20,000 views.
Yeah.
And that completely like altered like the trajectory of kind of going forward.
Yeah.
And so that was my biggest like wow moment, was like, I can't believe people actually care about this thing, that like this concept that I have. I didn't have any gameplay footage or anything. It was just like, here are my thoughts on something that I want to create.
Yeah.
And people were really attached to the idea. And then to go into the second one. So favorite concept, I think, is probably the battle system, because I've played a lot of other monster catchers, and as you said, I haven't really seen anything like what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that being able to completely do something different was a huge accomplishment for us, like as a team. And it's something that I'm extremely excited about, because I think we did something a little bit different. So yeah, excited for that.
Yeah, for sure. So Pope asks, what's one technical tip you'd give to newer monster taming game developers?
Technical tip, I would say, is, I guess, figure out, this isn't necessarily for, I guess, monster catchers. This is kind of for anybody, but still relates. But as indie developers, I'm actually making a video on this right now, and I talk about this. But as indie developers, we have to figure out what makes us stand out, and what is going to make our project a success. And so we can't create photorealistic graphics or endless amounts of like endings or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we have to stand out through our uniqueness, what makes the game different, and how do you push the boundaries of what you set out to do.
Yeah.
So I think that most games, you should be able to like exactly like pinpoint the idea of the game in a sentence, so that it's simple enough that people can latch onto and understand. But what really makes a successful indie game is being able to, how far do you push those limits? And I don't know, I think that's something that a lot of people maybe kind of like overlook sometimes, is like the importance of just like pushing that boundary.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great advice.
I don't know.
It's even something like in the monster taming community that some people have brought up. Like, there's a lot of monster taming games, and some people are worried that maybe too many of them are going to be too similar. But I mean, I've noticed a lot of them are pretty different. So that's definitely something that's good, and I think it's something that sort of needs to happen.
Yeah, how do you stand out?
Exactly.
And what makes your game, in any genre, what makes your game different from the hundreds or thousands of others out there?
Exactly. So Nazir asks, do you guys have like IVs or EVs in the game?
I don't think we will. We wanted to simplify stats a little bit, because again, with our combat being so complex and kind of like, I don't know. We wanted to simplify the other elements. So like, for example, our stats are very basic, and not that there's no stats, but didn't want to do anything crazy, because we didn't want to overcomplicate the gameplay more than it needs to be. So IV and EV stuff isn't really something that we plan on doing for our game. We want everyone to feel like they have a fair chance.
Yeah.
And so taking out some of that like luck-based stuff, I think was important for us, because we want to focus more on the skill and less on the luck elements.
I'm seeing more and more pushback against IV and EV systems, to be honest. Like, a lot of people don't want them in the games anymore. I mean, I personally don't like them, but like, if you think about it, I remember I put about probably 850 hours just into Pokemon X, and because most of my time was just spent breeding. And when you think about it, it's like you spend all that time just running around in circles with a coin in your 3DS, so you don't have to sit there and do it yourself. And
Yep.
meanwhile, the people that do use like Action Replay or whatever however they do it now, um, they just end up with the same stuff as you within seconds. And it makes you like,
Yeah.
man, I'm spending all these hours doing this, and it's like it's not making me better at the game. It's not making it's not doing anything like that. Whereas like you might as well just give everybody the same like the same inherent stats, because at the end of the day,
Right.
to face off at the competitive level, you have to sit
You
there
have to do
and
it.
yeah, and basically
Yeah.
roll dice for hours, right?
Yep.
Cool. So Marlon asks, and Marlon's notorious for asking this question. Are you open for any crossover opportunities with other monster taming developers?
Yeah, I'm always open to it. I'm actually working with two other monster catcher devs right now.
Ooh.
But I'm definitely open to working with other titles. I think that how I want to operate and how I have been operating with the other two is,
Yeah.
just kind of like swapping monsters. So
Yeah.
taking a monster from my game, putting it in theirs,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Just to kind of create a little bit of a collaboration between like games and also like communities. Um, I think it's really cool, and honestly, I love to see my monsters in a different style.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
For sure.
always open to it. So yeah, for sure, I'm open to it.
I still remember the day. This was during the Serialum Kickstarter campaign. It was like the first time we ever got anything like this that I know of, anyway. And they
Right.
were like, "Yeah, we're crossing over with this, and that." And I'm like, like that. The thought of doing crossovers had never crossed my mind. And now, like every time I ask that question to a developer, I'll always hear like, "Oh yeah, we're working on something," or I'm definitely interested. And
Yeah,
it's like crazy. Like this has started like a whole thing. Now we just need someone to just start working on the monster taming Smash Bros, and we'll be good to go.
that would be awesome, honestly. Man,
Marlon asks, oh, sorry, Marlon already asked that. Never mind. Zendra asks, what are the core design pillars slash design philosophy that goes into designing the attacks and stats of your monsters?
that's an interesting question. So what are the design pillars and the philosophy that goes into designing attacks? So we try to for us, we think it's really important to make sure that the game is very balanced. So stats, I guess, as well. Like all of our monsters will be at a level like be able to be used in a balanced way. So everyone would be able to be used competitively and things like that. At least to our knowledge. Um, so I guess like for us, for stats specifically, we make them all equal. So every monster's stats will be distributed to have like I guess like an overall average to add up to the same as every other monster.
Okay.
And for attacks, things like I don't know, things can get really spicy with attacks, but we try to basically manage like the area that the attack takes up, like how many
Yeah.
how many spots, how many slots it takes, and so we can balance that with things like how much damage it does, if there's status conditions tied to that attack, and then like the MP cost, the mana cost
Yeah.
of the attack. So we're definitely putting into like a lot of thought into how we can make this game feel fair and balanced, and create different play styles that all feel like they're their own kind of like way of playing. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer,
Oh yeah.
especially when a lot of people don't really understand fully how the combat actually works.
Oh no, well, you know what? I'll have to when the game comes out in beta, I'll have to do some studying, and perhaps I'll put out a video sort of just giving a general overview of the system so people aren't confused when they get the game.
Yeah,
I'm
for
sure
sure.
I'm sure actually playing the games there'll be like tutorials and people will figure it out.
For sure. Yeah.
So yeah,
It's always good to have extra information.
yeah, for sure. So that sort of wraps up our questions for the day. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Reece, for coming on the podcast, and I really do look forward to seeing your game be successful. And I think you're gonna smash that goal.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
a huge pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. It's my pleasure. Was there anything else you wanted to sort of add before we wrap things up?
I would just say, obviously make sure you back the Kickstarter. I know this is coming out the day of the launch, so I need all the help I can get. So if you guys are still listening to this, then hopefully you're interested enough to help us out. And just like if you're a developer or if you're just somebody that plays games, but try to keep that creativity alive and get inspired, like whether this inspired you or something else. But it's like I had no idea that my journey was going to get to where I am today.
Yeah.
Going like full-time indie developer was something that I always dreamed of and never actually even attempted to do it because I didn't think that it was at all possible.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, like keep at whatever you're doing. This is more for developers, but really applies to anybody. But if you're passionate about something, like take that time that's necessary to build something out of it and make something successful out of your journey. Yeah, it's
No, awesome.
you don't know where you're
great
gonna
message.
go.
So yeah, guys, if you did enjoy the podcast, obviously make sure to check out Reece's YouTube channel, Twitter, Kickstarter, Steam. All that stuff will be linked in the description. Like I said earlier, you can subscribe to this channel for monster taming content on the daily, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.